You're listening to the RN Mentor, a podcast designed to document and bring you the work and experience of some of the most influential nurses in our profession. We will be sitting down and having a discussion with the leaders of today's nursing world as they share their work, how they navigate their nursing path, and their views on the future of the profession. My name is Ali Tayeb. I am a registered nurse, United States Navy veteran, a Jonas Veterans Healthcare Scholar, and your host for the RN Mentor. Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the RN Mentor podcast. I am super excited to be joined again by my good friend and colleague, Dr. James Simmons. Dr. Simmons is a board-certified acute care nurse practitioner, frontline healthcare provider, and passionate multimedia medical personality. Dr. James is one of the most sought-after medical experts in media because of his uncanny ability to distill the complex and complicated into consumable content for any community. He is also the brains and heart behind a vibrant online community where followers can ask the NP all over social media at Dr. James Q. Simmons. As seen and heard on NBC, Fox, CBS, ABC, KTLA, Yahoo, Scripps News, The Young Turks, KROQ, SiriusXM, oh my God, how many of these are there? Loveline, Dash Radio, and countless more. His combination of extensive multimedia experience, real, relatable, and reliable approach, and more than 13 years of critical care practice make Dr. James one of the most innovative voices changing the way we talk about healthcare today. Dr. James holds a Bachelor's of Arts in Journalism and Mass Communication from Drake University, a Master's of Science in Nursing from University of Illinois, Chicago, and a Doctorate of Nursing Practice from the University of California, Los Angeles, where he is also a frequent guest lecturer and research consultant. This is my favorite part of your bio, James. Dr. James was featured in Beyonce's Break My Soul Hive certified video. He's a little bit towards the end, but he's definitely there. He is also the recipient of multiple prestigious professional awards, including the Public Health Champion Award from Reach LA, the Sharp Cutting Edge Award from the American Association of Nurse Practitioners, and the Creative Communication Award from Sigma Theta Tau, among others. Dr. James is honored to be a founding and continuing clinical ambassador for the CDC's Let's Stop HIV Together campaign. He also serves proudly on the American Nurses Association's California LGBTQIA+ task force and on multiple nonprofit boards, including as an advisory board chair for APAIT, whose vision is to advocate, educate, and achieve optimal health for vulnerable communities, and Black Queer Town Hall, a nonprofit organization led by Peppermint and Bob the Drag Queen, another part of my favorite part of your bio, committed to supporting Black queer excellence by cultivating community, sharing knowledge, and uplifting voices. Welcome back, Dr. Simmons.
I didn't know you were going to read the whole thing. Oh my God.
You know what? I enjoy your bio. I'm going to say it out loud. I enjoy reading your bio because it's so not the bio of necessarily what we call air quote registered nurse within our community.
It's funny. So I'm working on updating the bio. And the other day I sent it to one of my very best friends, like lifelong best friends, is a big muckety muck internal communications and marketing person. Like, she writes and she has people on her team who write for her, and she's been reading stuff her entire life and editing things her entire life. So I sent it to her and she was like, do all of these bios always have so many adjectives? She had a lot to say about my bio. It was very funny. Thank you very
Yeah.
much for reading that. I appreciate it. I am super mega ultra happy to be back hanging out.
Awesome. Awesome. Glad to have you. And I appreciate talking to you. And for my guests, if you don't know, once in a while, Dr. Simmons and I sit down, have lunch together, and we just chit chat about the world of nursing. And this is why this podcast, we're on this podcast again together, is
Mhm.
because last time we were talking about the nursing profession and things like mentoring and career choices. And one of
Mm.
those questions that, I was asking at the time and still continue to ask once in a while is like, what the heck am I doing in the world of nursing? What's my impact? Did I make the right decision? I mean, these are the things I'm sure some of the listeners are also, you come across your career at a point where like, then you get to that point where like, what am I doing?
Right.
Like you get into this, you get into the wheel of uh whatever the work and life, and you just at some point sometimes lose track as to why it is that we do what we do, and then we find our way back again. But so
Right.
let's talk about that. Actually, let's bring our so for our listeners, Doctor, we the previous segment we did with Dr. Simmons, we went through his whole career at the point.
Mm.
What's new in the world of Dr. Simmons?
Whoa.
I know you have a lot going on.
Because that was like a couple of years ago, right? That was like a pandemia in the middle of the worst of the COVID pandemic when we were sort of semi shut down or coming out of it.
Yeah.
So I'm still practicing as an acute care nurse practitioner. I'm still a hospitalist. I think I'm still at the same hospital. I've been at that hospital for 4 or 5 years,
I
so
think so.
still there. I have done a lot of this other sort of media land, if you will. So one of the things I love about, and for the listeners, please, I think we're going to talk a little bit about burnout, and we're going to talk a little bit about like, what do I do next with my life and my career? And this is something that Dr. Taib and I both sitting here sometimes are like, what am I doing next with my career and my life? This is I think a really tough, but also beautiful part of nursing. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that I also think is beautiful about having that RN behind your name, the world is really honestly your oyster. There are so many different things that you can do that we don't even think about that we can do. And so my jam is kind of media, right? Like my jam is like podcasting, like this, as well as like TV and radio and social media and all those things. So I have dug even deeper
Mhm.
into that. For a while I was just, I was doing a lot of TV during the worst of the COVID pandemic, but it was mostly just around COVID. And so when COVID stopped dominating the headlines,
Yeah.
so did the phone calls for Dr. James to come, talk about what it's like on the front lines. And that's okay. That's good. But what that happened for me, I'm going to use this crazy word, and a lot of nurses, I would argue that every single nurse should have one, but not in a social media kind of weird way. But my brand for the longest time was, oh, he's the guy on social media who does those kind of like fun, funny videos, but he's really the COVID guy.
Yeah.
And he's good on TV. And he's on the front lines of COVID, so we can call him and they can talk about COVID.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, when COVID sort of fell out of the mainstream headlines, so did the phone calls stopped. But what I realized is that I really love TV. I've always loved TV, and doing it. That's sort of something I envisioned myself doing it. So I had to kind of figure out, where do we pivot? Where do we sort of change from there? So
Yeah.
there have been a lot of things that have happened since then. And I'm a regular on a couple of different TV shows and programs. More talking like, my shtick lately is sort of, and not shtick, I think it's really important, is debunking social media health crap, for lack of a better word, right?
Yeah.
Oh, eat raw honey and it'll cure your breast cancer, right? Like whatever dumb stuff we're seeing on TikTok.
Yeah.
I really have enjoyed sort of tackling some of that, and even just taking the headlines and really dissecting it for people and saying, okay, I'm actually going to give you what this headline really means in 30 seconds or less, because that's all the attention span that a lot of us have. So still working on that, still working on TV. We have some longer form things, some podcasty things coming out soon that I'm actually not allowed to talk about yet. There's a teaser for everyone, but stay tuned, because it's, while a very weird time at this intersection of anything else and Hollywood, right? Anything in this world is weird since the strikes and COVID and layoffs and mergers and all those things. I'm still playing in that TV world, and there's some exciting things coming soon.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Because I know you've been on and off of that something that's cooking in the pot. But I know it hit some like the strikes and things like that, and so it's a little delayed, but it's coming. I'm glad to hear it's coming, because I was like, "What happened to this?" I was waiting for it.
What's going on? Yeah, well, and there's a couple of things that happened during that time that were, I mean, this is sort of the nature. I feel like there are good parallels here between that world and, like, I'm mostly a hospital guy. I have a little tiny clinic practice, but mostly a hospital guy. Whereas, okay, we've got a patient with heart failure, and we're going to diurese that patient, and we start with a little bit of Lasix, and we grab an echo, and we call cardiology, and we do these other things, and well, it works for a while, and then it stops working, or maybe we need to change medications, or maybe they're allergic to Lasix, right? Or maybe this heart failure was actually caused by coronary artery disease, and we got to do a PCI or a CABG on top of it, right? Like all of these things where we are constantly sort of adjusting the plan of a patient in that sort of intimate setting, that acute setting. It's the same on the other side of the career, but it's fun trying to navigate that as a nurse. So, I had signed deals with very large production companies. One of them I'm not allowed to talk about. The other one was Lionsgate. And it was awesome. And it fell through because of layoffs and mergers and new leadership, just like sort of anything. And it's what I ultimately, at kind of the higher level of all of this, realized was that there really is a voice for nursing in the conversation, in the larger zeitgeist, in the public media conversation about health in a really fun and engaging way. And I can use all of the quotes about how we are, depending on who you ask, we are 4 or 5 million strong. We are, the largest segment of the healthcare workforce, and that darn quote about we're the most trusted profession 22 years running. It's really most ethical, but that's a different conversation. Yeah. So, whatever you believe about all of that, there is absolutely no reason, and it is still my passion, why we are not only just represented, but the primary people talking about health to the public. The public wants to hear from us. They're very clear about that. It's changing the culture in television. It's changing the culture in news. It's changing the culture that only a physician is the person who is qualified enough to communicate with the public. Which I think when you lay it out like that seems completely asinine. Like, who's better at communicating with public about their health than nurses? Like, seems pretty simple to me.
Yeah, I agree. And you're in a unique situation, like not only just because of the fact that you are in the media world, but even as a hospitalist, because we don't see a lot of nurse practitioners as a hospitalist with an organization. It's something that's, we're starting to see a little bit more of, but not enough to say, oh my God, this is a normal trajectory of somebody who's a nurse practitioner. With a DNP or PhD or whatever.
Yeah, when I first, I got my acute care at what I think is still one of the best acute care schools, University of Illinois, Chicago. And great program. They stuck us in a residency, which I loved, by the way. Mine was only 3 months. They since have extended it. I think it's like 9 months or a year. I don't know. It's crazy. It's like a super long residency now, where they stick the nurse practitioners in with the interns and first year residents in the ICU at University of Illinois Hospital. Beautiful. So it's great. So I lived that whole ICU life with the thought of, you either pop out as someone who is working exclusively in the ICU or one of the critical care specialties. So like cardiology or neurology or something like that. But this weird sort of like, hospitalist and an acute care nurse practitioner could actually do that is I often hear students, when I'm precepting students or people just reach out to me and they're like, wait, you do this as a nurse practitioner?
Yeah.
I do. And it is actually the primary thing I've done for my almost 10-year nurse practitioner career is be a hospitalist. And
Yeah.
I think hospitals really find a lot of value in it when it's the properly trained and experienced nurse practitioner.
And I think that's key. That's key, right? Like you can't come out of school and say you're going to be a hospitalist, because I don't think our schools are doing their due diligence into prepping that. But you put a couple of years of experience under your belt and you become comfortable with that world. I think it's a very nice progression.
Absolutely. And so I'm going to be vilified for this, for all the people listening to your podcast, but I would argue that very few of us nurse practitioners pop out of school ready to practice.
Right.
Also, very few physicians pop out of school, at least med school, ready to practice. There's a reason they go to residency, right? There's a reason they do this. So I constantly advocate for something similar. I also do think it's really important that people understand that not all nurse practitioner training is the same. And so if you received an FNP 100% online, that's fantastic for being an FNP outside of a hospital. But if you haven't run a code, worked in an ICU, understand the flow of a hospital, managed really critically ill patients who aren't necessarily in the ICU, and you did all of your clinical rotations through Zoom, you are not ready to be any nurse practitioner in a hospital.
Yeah.
Hospitalists or not. And a lot of people will really get on me for saying that, but I think we're doing a disservice to our profession. And we're seeing that in statistics. We're seeing that in these terrible articles that they've written about nurse practitioners that were obviously very biased and very one-sided and very influenced by the AMA and et cetera, et cetera. We all know that. Yep. But also, where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's a little bit of truth in what they're saying. And I think it's on us as a profession to say, wow, we've got this great model of a bunch of nurse practitioners growing around the country being hospitalists.
Yep.
And that acute care programs, when done really well, are at least laying a really solid foundation for nurse practitioners to go into something like being a hospitalist, or even more of us are in the theater, right, in the operating room now. So let's beef that up and let's make sure it's done in the right way so that we're pumping out qualified, experienced NPs to handle this hospitalist role.
And I think that I don't want to say blame, but I'm going to put the onus back on the profession of nursing, that they need to do a better job policing. We need to do a better job policing our own. Like, we have some of these universities that are diploma mills. We know they exist and they continue to operate because people pass, I'm going to air quote, pass their boards or whatever it is, right? But they're not ready to practice, right? The written exams do not certify people or are not a guarantee that you're ready to practice in real life. And if you're coming from a diploma mill university, unfortunately, you're not going to have the readiness you may have had working in a residency program in an ICU, right? Two completely different ways of teaching, I guess.
It is.
Or preparing individuals. But the evidence is out there that nurse practitioners do an outstanding job. So that's not the question. It's just a matter of appropriately making sure that they have the education and training they need and making those positions available to them. So when they are ready, they can transition into those roles.
And I think it's important for everyone listening too, who are feeling very reactionary right now about all of this. I get you. Multiple truths can exist simultaneously, right?
Yeah.
We can simultaneously have a ton of data about the quality of care that nurse practitioners provide and the cost effectiveness of care that nurse practitioners provide, and the patient satisfaction provided by nurse practitioners is on par with physicians. In some cases, in some environments, even better, particularly that patient satisfaction aspect, so that we can stand firmly in that data. What can also exist are these diploma mills, and what can also exist is that there is no standardization of training of nurse practitioners across the board. And so you're right, some physicians are getting experiences with, not at the fault of the person, but at the fault of the system, nurse practitioners who are unprepared and can't handle scenarios and shouldn't be working in certain environments. And I'm with you 100%. That's on us. We got to fix that.
Yep, I agree. All right, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, we wanted to talk about a few things. One of them was professional pathways, which is why we're talking right now. Um, and you are like, as I mentioned, you are in a sort of you are a bit of a unicorn when it comes to
You're saying I have a horn.
so so as somebody who, not only like, nurse practitioner stuff aside, you've done a lot of work that's been outside of the realm of nursing, right?
Mhm.
Um, so and as we go through like an undergraduate program, there's still these undergraduate programs have become so sterile that they are just producing hospital-based nurses that don't know what they don't know and don't know the potential of what they could do, right?
Isn't that
Let's talk
something?
a little bit about that, on how the preparation in our programs actually matters in what we produce, or is that even the place for us to produce these, these other unicorns that I know exist out there, right? But instead of them, stumbling on these other things that they can do, how can we be more purposeful
Mm.
in promoting that within the profession? Because it's
Mhm.
not going to show up on the NCLEX. It's not going to show up on a national board exam. It's not going to show up in these other venues where you have a bunch of people who have studied nursing for like 50 years and they've only known clinic-based nursing, have never ventured out of that realm.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
how do we address that now? Because where should we be
Oof.
promoting, growing, fertilizing these individuals?
I think we have to really grab onto understanding that I love that, fertilizing people's minds with
Yeah.
the different things that they can do. That's fantastic, Dr. Taib. So we really have to embrace the world that we are living in right now.
Mm,
And I'll go back to the duality of, multiple truths, where um, there are very foundational basics in terms of nursing that we all need to be more than competent in. And I would argue that those basics, A, need to change and adjust to the current world, and B, get even elevated. So we're in this tough place because there's a nursing shortage and there's an NP shortage
mm,
and we got to fill the provider gap and all this kind of stuff. So we're just trying to pump people out of the system. But
right.
the problem is the people we're pumping out of the system are barely prepared for those basics, to handle those
Yep.
basics, even just clinic or hospital-based practice, let alone all of the other things. I think we also have to acknowledge that people's health and wellness does not exist in a vacuum. So
Mm,
their health and wellness is constantly being influenced by all of the other factors of the world. So obviously AI is a big thing, but you can't just say have 2 slides in a PowerPoint presentation to your nursing class and be like, is really gonna change the world and it's gonna help you write your soap notes better, I guess. And be sure when you look up things using AI that you double check it, because it doesn't always get it right. Okay, moving on.
yeah.
Right? Like, are you kidding me? Whereas on the flip side of this, I think those of us who sort of on the other side of things realize that there are literally roles for RNs to be the people who influence the coding of AI, the outputs of AI, how AI is actually integrated into our workflow systems, and not just sitting down at the computer, but how AI can influence our assessment and exam,
Yep.
the building of medical devices. And I mean medical devices like our stethoscopes, right? We have cardiovascular grade, cardiology grade stethoscopes right now that you can just place on a patient's chest and everybody can hear their heartbeat and breath sound all over the hospital if you want to. And you plug it
Yeah.
all in. How do you think we got there? That's technology, that's AI. Nurses could be a part of developing that, selling that, creating new versions of that, explaining it to patients, like on social media or on television, right? There are
Something other than scrubs.
something other than, if you don't want. And this is why when I try to tell nurses this, and I speak about this at schools all of the time and different organizations about, here are some just examples of ideas where you having an RN, you having that background can allow you to be the person who is in the room saying, no, that doesn't work. Or even like healthcare related crisis management for companies, or if you're into law enforcement, there are, how do we build like tactical medicine instruction in the field for law enforcement, right? Or if you choose to go into the military, like your background, Dr. Taib, like there's so many different startup companies. There's no bigger sector right now than people trying to do startup technology in the healthcare space. And it's a bunch of tech bros in, well, old Silicon Valley, but there's lots of new Silicon Valleys now, right? You got a bunch of tech bros sitting behind computers who have no medical background whatsoever, building billion-dollar healthcare devices that they're going to sell to the public, that the public is then going to trust. And at some point along that process, they say, oh, we should probably rope in a physician. So they'll go pay 1 to 3 doctors a crap load of money to review everything that they've developed over the last 5 to 7 years. And the physicians will be like, oh, okay, well, this is good and that's bad, and this is good and that's bad. I would do it this way. And then off they go. Well, why don't we nurses get called in to get given a crap load of money to provide feedback on people's devices? But what, we can be the coders. We can be the ones developing those. There's no reason why we can't be one of the tech bros or tech people developing these things. Podcasts like you're doing, being a part of the like corporate wellness event, like there's medical tourism all over the world, right? I've thrown out so many things right now that have nothing to do with wearing scrubs or working in a hospital. But medical tourism is typically guided by, now there's a little bit of hand in pocket sort of stuff there, like let me grease your wheels, right? But medical tourism is typically guided by physicians. So if you love to travel and you also want to help people get the type of care, and maybe it's aesthetics, maybe it's not, but get the care that they need, because our healthcare system is so broken in the United States, they need to go to a different country to do that. And they need to be there for 2 weeks, and they need a guide who both understands travel, understands the community where you're going, and understands the healthcare that these people are seeking. Who's better to do that than a nurse, right? How many nurses listening to the podcast right now are like, wait, I could be a tour guide because I'm a nurse, right? Like these.
But this is something we don't talk about. We don't talk about any of this stuff. Like
we don't.
Anyway,
I think that's part of it. I think we just have to start talking about it. And I think we've got to, you and I teach, have taught, guest lecture, whatever. It's literally on you and I. It's on all the generations of people teaching to understand and really try to get innovative and creative about how we incorporate these things into the curriculum that we have to deliver, so that the nurses we're teaching can pass whatever boards and exams they need to pass. Because if we start trying to add something else to instructors' plates, they're going to lose their mind. But I do think there really are ways to start incorporating everything I said and the like 57 other nursing examples I have of like non-traditional nursing career roles. We can really start incorporating that into what and how we teach. So it's got to start with schools. It's also got to start in just really encouraging each other. One of the things that is really discouraging to me is when nurses really, really get on other nurses on social media. I am not a meme account. I can dance very well, but I'm not a dancing nursing account. I don't think we should be doing dancing videos in the middle of like the operating room, like stuff like that. I sort of disagree with, but more because I feel like, well, no, you have an opportunity to educate people, or you have an opportunity to make people laugh, or you have an opportunity to do a bunch of things here because you're a nurse. So take advantage of that opportunity. What I hate is that you're a nurse, you should be doing X, Y, and Z. You shouldn't be on social media. Those days are gone. Boo. Those days are so gone. Everyone's on. We have politics aside. We may elect a president who gets memed into the office. Either one of them.
Yeah.
There's no bigger driving force than social media right now. So why are nurses not taking advantage of that to elevate the profession, to elevate their individual professional organizations, and to elevate their own personal brand? This to me seems
Yeah.
like crazy that people aren't doing this.
But are we are there enough of us talking about branding? That's what I think, and I think that's where it doesn't exist. Like even for some of our more experienced nurses, like they don't see themselves as a brand. They don't see like they're waiting for the big mothership of nursing to brand them for the world, and I think that's probably the wrong approach, right? There is branding that happens just naturally because we are nurses and we do have representation out there,
Mhm.
but us as individuals, everybody has their own brand, and I'm a big proponent of that. But I don't think we talk about that, right? As a result, we produce nurses that don't see themselves as a brand
Yep.
and don't know how to, capitalize on that, right? And
Yep.
I
And
think it's one of
your brand doesn't have to be, this is my fun, unique title, and I've got 100,000 Instagram followers. And
yeah,
what,
that's
that's
not
not
it.
what we
Yeah,
mean
yeah,
by brand. Like, and
yeah,
you don't have to
yeah,
sell it. Like, I'm working on a course. You don't have to sell a course. You don't have to have a website. You don't have to do all that as a brand. My husband, for instance, doesn't have any of that, but he has a
yeah.
very clear, distinct brand within his corporate job. He's not a
Right.
nurse. I'll use him as an example. In his corporate job, he's the guy that knows the systems and the processes of
Yeah.
his organization so well that everyone, literally CEO down, knows to come to him when they're like, why is this process broken?
Yeah.
So he has branded himself within, now he's been there a long time, but he's branded himself within that company as being the process guy. So when there's something in the system that's broken down and they need a set of eyeballs who understands the process and say, oh, it's actually that cog in the wheel right there, and this is how I would recommend you fix it. That's
Yep.
how he's branded himself. Dr. Cheryl Lahuke, who, if she has not been on the podcast, I think should be, she has branded herself as the nurse who solves the really complicated problems that are out of the box.
Mm,
So her health organization, CNO, CEO, CMO, down, all of them will go to Cheryl, and she's the special project queen. We need to figure out why X, Y, and Z is happening. Find the data, do a little research on it, provide us 1 to 3 options of how we fix this, price it all out, budget it all out. And then once the higher ups decide with her recommendation, then
yeah.
she gets to execute it.
Yeah.
She works mostly with engineers.
Mm,
Like, this is her job,
mm,
but she's a nurse
yeah.
and she loves it, right? She
Yeah.
has no guardrails. She has very little. She's got oversight just because she works for a large health organization, but no one's breathing down her neck to be like, why didn't you fill out this report? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Like, she's out there solving problems and saving her health organization millions and millions of dollars because she's realized she's branded herself as the nurse who gets it from a nursing standpoint and gets it from an operations standpoint. And now they love it. I mean, she really has carved a path for herself that's made her very, very happy.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I think that's important. Like so many people see the brand as like a logo and having a website and having a da da
Mm.
da all that stuff. Which for some people, like just like myself and you, right? Like we have this external component of it, but it's really like how do you brand yourself with your expertise, right? Like what is it that makes you unique? What makes you different? What is your selling point, right?
Mm.
If you're looking to do something other than the traditional bedside. And some people, that's their brand. That bedside, that's their expertise. That's what they do best.
Absolutely.
And they're your go-to people when you're looking for, that direct one-on-one patient care stuff, right? That's who you
Yeah.
go to. So that's
Yeah.
important.
It really is. It really is something. And I want people to embrace that, by the way.
Yeah.
Most of us went into nursing because we do like caring for people in a really, I say intimate, obviously not in a sexual way, but like the word intimate Well, but
We're passionate about the cause.
We got to clarify these things in this day and age now, Dr. Taib, like caring for people in a really intimate way. Like there's something that attracted all of us to, sure, the hours and maybe the money and the ability to have a job, all that kind of stuff. That's great. That's sort of secondary to me. But you have a connection with other human beings.
Yeah.
And I think that it's so important that we maintain that connection and have that ability at the bedside or in the clinic or whatever, in that one-on-one interaction, but then also understand that you can still have that connection with human beings and have that passion for the profession outside of wearing scrubs and outside of the hospital environment.
Yeah. You just said something that I'm writing it down as I'm about to ask it. I don't know why I'm writing it down. Passion for the profession.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't exist for everyone. For some people, this is a job. They want to get in, get out, not think about it at all. And then there's other people, like I would like to throw myself in there, and I'm going to throw you in there as well, that were passionate about the profession of nursing, right? That means when we clock out at a certain time, we're still, our brains to a certain degree is still functioning within the profession of nursing because we're still trying to stay engaged and think about what we can do and what we could do better, how we can impact the profession, how we can impact populations of people. Like our brain still is active in that area. So passion about the profession. Let's talk about that for a second. I don't know what I want to ask about that, but like, is that something that should be an expectation for everybody in the profession? I know the answer to this. And if not, or let's, how do we concentrate on the ones that do have a passion for the profession? Because I think having passion for the profession, you can't make someone be passionate about what they consider a job, right?
Right.
Nursing is different. In my brain, nursing is different.
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about the work and the community. So how can we help elevate those? And I'm not going to force people to be passionate about it. If you're a fantastic nurse, but you want to treat it as a job, good for you. Fantastic. But if you do have that passion for the profession, how can we create opportunities for those individuals, right? How do we more directly not influence them, but create those pathways, open doors, mentor, sponsor? How do we do more of that as a profession?
Sure. This is I love that you bring this up because this is actually what I'm working on right now for this my sort of course, if you will, but really just my motivational thing.
Yeah.
That is still coming this fall, a little bit closer to the holidays, but I call it Code U. Resuscitating your passion for nursing and charting a course to career clarity. Code U, though.
Wow, nice.
Like thinking about Code Blue, resuscitating your passion for the profession. Most of us still have some of that passion somewhere in there. And I like to think about it in this lens of a code, right?
Yeah.
Even nurses who only work in clinic environments, at least at some point of time, like got a code scenario. And one of the most important things really with any patient scenario, but obviously in a code, is assessing where you are. Like, let's just stop. We can almost S-bar this if you want. So for those of you like newer nurses who don't use the old school S-bar, situation, background, assessment, and recommendation, what's the situation? Why is this patient coding? Like, what's going on? Give me the background of this patient. I think we've got to do the same thing with ourselves before we even jump to the like, what's the thing that's going to revitalize my passion in the profession? I think we got to stop and see where we are. Most of us, some statistics would argue as many as 63% of us are clinically burned out of nursing. So we got to just stop and breathe for a second. I think realize like go, fast, forward, just like bust through, just like power through is actually not what's going to revitalize that passion for the profession. We got to stop. We got to breathe. We got to figure out where we are. And figuring out where you are for a lot of people might be like, I cannot be in the hospital anymore. I cannot do bedside, or I actually don't even want to be a nurse. Or where a lot of people default to is, I got to go back to school. That will answer the question for me. Let me just go back to school. Well, I say to everybody, pump your brakes. Where are you? Assess yourself just to say, I am burned out. I think I still love nursing, but I'm not sure. But I'm
Yeah.
acknowledging this burnout. I'm acknowledging that something needs to change in my life, right? And then stabilize yourself. That's sort of the next thing that we would also do in a code, right? So
Yeah.
what's going on in the scenario? Okay, let's just stabilize the patient. Does that mean shocking? Does that mean giving some fluids because our pressure is low? Does this mean CPR? Like, are we is an actual code, right? Like, let's just stabilize where you are. And for some folks, that may mean you're on this committee at work, you're picking up these extra shifts. You also have got 3 kids at home. You're in the middle of a divorce. You actually signed up to go back to school. You've got 14 things going on. You heard me on another podcast and you're trying to start your own podcast. Like, hold on. Let's just stabilize. Let's just figure out where you are. Maybe don't pick up those extra shifts if you can help it, right? If you don't need the money, maybe put the brakes on that podcast for 3 more months. I promise you there will be plenty of space for you to podcast in 3 months from now, right? Maybe just like, let's pause, stabilize yourself and figure out where you are. And I think those 2 things to start are really 2 of the most important. Stop and be really honest with yourself. And I'm sort of developing these really like fun tools and a couple of quizzes and like tests about yourself, kind of like those old BuzzFeed tests.
Yeah.
Where you take this test and you're like, who am I at the end of this test? Like, what Harry Potter character am I, right? So I'm sort of developing a couple of things like that will help people assess where they are, stabilize, and what are the things that they need to stabilize. And then once you've really figured that out, then I think your mind is much clearer to say, oh, this is the thing that's going to reignite my passion. It really is school. Or thank God I didn't start school because it's not school. My passion is actually selling medical devices or being a healthcare consultant on the set of a TV show. Or, I actually really want to go into administration. Like, I think that sounds fun. Or I want to go organize for my union. Like, whatever your thing is,
Yeah.
But I think that we're all pretty burned out and we're all pretty at our wits' end about a lot of things, whether that's staffing or inefficient resources or not enough education or whatever the thing is. And I think we've just got to pause, see where we are, and then also do the things that you need to stabilize yourself. And yes, if that means add yoga into your routine, fine. If that means stop doing so darn much at work, fine. If that means taking a semester off of school, fine. But like, it'll all be there for you in the future. I promise.
Yeah. And that other thing, I think really, as you mentioned this, the other thing is really thinking about your own environment, right? Because so many of us find ourselves in environments which is not the healthiest environment for us, right? And being able to say, what's not healthy about this environment, what engagements are not healthy in this environment, and either changing the environment or stopping those engagements or the work that is leading to those like toxicities with our own environment, right? Being confident enough to say, okay, this is not good for me. And reevaluating, what your next steps are. And I hate to say it, but like nursing, we have so many freaking choices. And I hope organizations out there like realize that we are not our grandparents that stayed at the same place for 50 years and retired. We are mobile. Like, I don't care who you are at this point. Like, the current workforce is very mobile. And the sooner organizations realize that, we're not looking necessarily to retire at this organization. Right?
Yeah.
We're looking to make an impact. We're looking to make a difference. We're looking to do good work. But if we're not doing that, we're going to start looking for other opportunities.
Yeah. And because they exist,
because they exist. And that's the thing. They definitely exist. It's just a matter of, just a matter of time that something else comes along. And like, that's what I want to do. I want to try something new. I want to try something different. I want to try a different organization, different environment, different experiences.
And we can. I love that you're bringing this up because I think there are especially earlier career nurses, I think feel like the only thing first of all, I have to start on nights on med surge.
Yeah.
I have to do that for 3 years before I can do anything else. And
Yeah.
then I can maybe apply for day shift, but it's not on the unit that I want. And blah. Absolutely not.
Yeah.
My only bedside job has been in an ER in a trauma center.
Yeah.
Because that's what I wanted, and I went for it. Now, I got lucky. I got into a little, like, they brought 2 of us on every year. It also happened to be where I did a clinical rotation because, again, UIC was really fantastic about actually placing their students in clinical rotations and not leaving it up to the student. Another pet peeve of mine. Side note, everyone listening, don't go to an NP program or any program that won't place you in clinical rotations for you. If they leave it up to you, do not go to that program. So,
hallelujah.
But I wanted it. I wanted to be in an ER. I knew it.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was it. I was not going to do that. And for some reason, I felt empowered enough. I think I had enough educators in my life who were like, yeah, if you don't want to work nights for med-surg, don't do it. Also, working nights in med-surg is legit. It's great. It's an amazing learning opportunity. If that's what you want to do it, but don't feel like you have to do that first. Don't feel like also if you are in an environment where you don't feel like you are being valued, it is unsafe for you and the patients, all of those things. I promise you, sister, there are plenty of other opportunities for you to go. And not even this weird new innovative stuff that I'm talking about. You're like, I want to work in a hospital. Great. If you don't like where you are, I'm not saying career hop every 18 months, but if you don't like where you are, there are better and different opportunities out there. And the default can't always be, well, I'm unhappy, so I should probably go back to school.
Yeah. No, I agree.
That's not.
Yeah. You need to find out where there's opportunities for you to re-energize. Right. I think that's one of the things that most people don't know where to find within the profession of nursing, right? Like your re-energizing isn't necessarily I need to go on a vacation, but how do you re-energize and become passionate again for within the profession of nursing? You get excited about the work that you're doing again. And going on vacation just makes me want to stay longer, have longer
stay on vacation.
Right? I get passionate about vacations. I don't get more passionate about work. Ooh, I'm going to go back and do more work. That's never the case. That's needed. That's vacation. That's time away. But it doesn't necessarily reignite your passion for the profession of nursing.
Right. And I think, to me, that's more of the stabilizing thing. Like, I definitely recommend, if you go on vacation, take some time off. Like, I promise you, especially if you're at a place where they're like dying for resources, if you're like, I'm actually taking a month off, y'all, I'll be back. They're probably going to be okay with that, right? Negotiate it, give them a little heads up, like that sort of thing. But they're probably going to be okay with that. Stabilize yourself. Because I don't think people can get really clear about what they want to do if they're operating from a fear, burnout, exhausted mindset. So sometimes you need the yoga, sometimes you need to train for a marathon, sometimes you need to go on vacation, all those things to stabilize yourself. And then I would argue figuring out that new path, reigniting that passion, or even finding that passion for some folks, is about understanding that who you are as a person and who you are as a nurse are not categorically different things. They can mesh together. I'm clearly a talker. I've learned I'm pretty darn good on TV. I'm also pretty darn good on stage. I am very transparent about money. I just got paid $14,000 to give a keynote lecture last week.
Wow.
As a nurse. This organization has paid me multiple times to do that same thing, but I am not necessarily special. I'm a very good speaker. I'm not the best speaker. But I know I'm a good talker, and I know I like doing it, and I know I like educating on stage. And so I found a pathway to both practice in the hospital and get paid $14,000 every time I do a keynote. I mean, not always, but this company paid me $14,000 to do a keynote, right? But that came, I wasn't able to pursue that. I wasn't able to find this organization to work with. I wasn't able to do all of those things from a place of fear. Oh God, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. I did it from a place of, oh God, if I don't do this, I'm going to die. Because I realize who I am. And I realized that, wow, I can be myself and I can do this stuff that I really enjoy. I get to be on the highest rated afternoon show in all of Los Angeles every other week as a nurse. because
Yeah.
I like doing it and I'm good at it. So if your thing is sport, like I'm a sports head, if your thing is sports, there is an avenue for you to explore a career in nursing that also has to do with sports. High level message. They don't have to be separate. You do not have to go in for your 312s and just do X, Y, and Z. And then the rest of your life is completely separate if you don't want them to be, right?
Yeah.
I think there's kind of two types of people. There are people who just go to work and that's it. And there are a lot of those folks who are nurses, and that is great.
We love them.
And we really do love you. And there are some of the best, like actual physical, like doing the job nurses that I know are those people, right? They come in, they're very focused, they do their work, they do their things, they go
beautiful
home. I'm not that guy. I gotta love what I'm doing. I gotta have some passion around what I'm doing. I gotta enjoy it. I gotta, see the future in it. I gotta feel like I'm giving back. And so for me, I did a lot of that stabilization. I did a lot of that. Like, I got to go on vacation. I got to do all this, whatever. And then I was able to realize that for me, school was a really smart option because I could then sort of have a very clear picture of what I wanted to do. And I knew that school was going to help me do that.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. So these are all fantastic points. And I think, again, you mentioned something with like, if you want to be in the sports or whatever else is your passion and kind of combining the two, you also can't wait till there's a job description with an RN pops up and then you can apply to it. You have to network. You have to be in the community. You have to go after it. And sometimes, what I've done in the past, and sometimes it's worked and sometimes it hasn't, is create the role, right? In partnership with whatever works for you, right? So sometimes those roles do not exist until somebody you're able to like connect with somebody that sees you and sees what you can bring to the table as a registered nurse and an individual with other talent, skills, abilities, right? Because otherwise, if you're waiting for those job descriptions to already exist for you, like a lot of those don't exist. Like you have to carve out, your own, not just a spoon, but an entire seat and table.
100%.
And you have to do that. Otherwise, if you're waiting for somebody else to realize that as a nurse, you can do this, those positions may not exist or probably do not exist.
No, right? And they don't. And as a part of this, I'll go back to that B word, brand. As a part of sort of developing your brand of just who you are as a nurse, you're going to practice things like your elevator pitch for that. You're going to practice talking to why you as a nurse are actually perfectly qualified to be one of the people who brings the principles of ethics to development of AI. You're going to learn as a nurse why not only are you a tennis pro, but you're also the on-site clinical director at a big tennis club in your neighborhood, right? In your city. If tennis is your jam, you can probably teach tennis and work as a nurse at this club, right? And do the both. Like nothing I said there of either of those jobs was someone working 312s in a hospital. But those two jobs actually exist because like what you said, those individuals said, I have to have a career in tennis. Like I learned how to be a nurse. And I think we sometimes think, well, I have to be an orthopedic surgeon hired by the team. The LA Lakers hired this long tenured orthopedic surgeon who is a sports medicine provider and blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's great. But there are plenty of opportunities. And maybe you can be on that person's team, right? Maybe you can also get hired by the LA Lakers. That'd be great. But also that job, even that job is not just going to show up on Indeed.
Exactly.
Right? You got to network and you got to be willing to sell yourself, if you will, and be really confident in your skills and abilities. And that's why I go back to this sort of like, I'm building this thing around a code, right? So code you. So you've assessed the situation and you've stabilized your patient. And then from there, and the patient being you, then from there, you're sort of able to start making decisions. And I think one of the things is deciding whether or not school is good for you. Because then if you're like, oh my gosh, I have got to work in sports. I just have to. I just absolutely have to. okay, great. So does your kid's school have a nurse on staff? Does the local YMCA, 8th grade girls basketball team have an RN? No. Well, if you've got a little basketball experience, a passion around it, and a nurse, they would love to have you, right? That's how you develop that experience. And then maybe you go get a year-long certificate in sports medicine or something, right? Like a postgraduate certificate type of thing. But then you're clear, oh, this is what I want to do. And you start moving in that direction versus I think so many of us feel like we have to make these decisions about our careers and about our life going forward from this place of, if I don't get out of this hospital right now, I'm going to become a patient myself, right? It's from a place of burnout. It's from a place of too much stress, too much adrenaline, too much fear. And I love us and I love our profession too much. I want us to all like be able to take a breather, stabilize ourselves, and then figure out where we go from there.
Yeah. And you mentioned something really quick, and I know we're almost at time. And that's, I think this is where like mentorship comes in. And for some reason, nursing is not the best at mentoring people for things that are a little bit out of the box. We talk a good game with the traditional pathways of nursing, but we as a profession are not really good at things that are out of the box, innovative, new, that didn't exist before, but now we're trying to create it, right? So I think having the ability to find mentors, and those mentors don't necessarily have to be nurses themselves. They just have to be people that have experience, that have a network that can open up doorways for you, right? To walk some, and sometimes we have to be creative. We have to be creative because we are everywhere. And it's just a matter of how do we engage in the profession in a creative way to create those new pathways.
Absolutely. Because you're not, I think you really nailed something. I want to reiterate what you said earlier. We're sort of trained as nurses, I think, at least in our younger nursing years, to the only opportunities that are available to us are the ones that people tell us are there. That job on Indeed, that job on LinkedIn, that job on a hospital's website. That's it. Those are the only opportunities available to nurses. Whereas some of, not all, but some of the happiest nurses I know are the ones who have carved their own spaces, who are in very non-traditional roles, or like I'm sort of half and half in a very like nurse practitioner, acute care hospital-y sort of thing. And then like the other half of what I do is like, there's like 3 of us out here doing it, right? Like there's like nobody else is doing this. And so it is really important that you find that mentorship sometimes outside of nursing. And I promise you, there are other nurses in that you can look towards as mentors who will really encourage this. They may not have your exact career path or the path that you're trying to forge, but they can be really encouraging of that. They really can, especially when it comes to, should I go back to school or not? Should I become the charge nurse at night? Right. That's like a big decision, right? Should I go into administration or should I stay rank and file? Right. Like that whole conversation. There are definitely people, and seek out multiple people. Just because someone's got 4,000 letters behind their name and you heard him on a podcast and you liked how he sounded on a podcast, doesn't mean that that's the right energy for you. Just because someone has a title of leader within an organization doesn't mean that they're the right leader to guide you. And so if that person, great. So that person is the assistant nurse, chief nurse at your hospital, but he or she might not, or they might not be able to guide you into how to become on the staff of the LA Lakers sports medicine team. Like they just don't know. So reach out to people who are doing sports medicine for sports teams, right? Like it's okay if they're not nurses. You need good mentors. And I think most of my mentors in the media space are not medical people because there just aren't a ton of them out there. But I have slid up in people's DMs, some very famous TV doctors, if you will, slid up in their DMs. And on the whole, they've been really lovely and sort of have helped really give me passion and inspiration about what I'm doing. But it's about putting yourself out there, and it's about being a little bit bold once you figure out that path that you want to go down.
There's a difference between being bold and pushy, though. So
very true. Very true.
Be bold, not pushy. uh, respect the spaces of the other experts, please.
Yes, and their time, right?
And their time, yeah. And you know, I've been lucky enough to have several mentors, and I continue to have several mentors because they meet different needs at different times, right?
Yep.
So I think it's important that we recognize we also need we may need more than one mentor because you know it's a new path or it's a new adventure, and not every mentor is going to have all the tools that you're going to need help with. So
1000%. But
yeah,
none of us got to where we are without mentorship. If
right.
if you take anything away from this conversation we've just had for the last hour or so, like no one, not any of us, the people you look up to the most, not any of us got anywhere without mentorship.
No, absolutely, yeah.
And that those mentors just don't necessarily fall into your lap either.
Yeah.
You got
Yeah, you have to look for them. You have to look. Well, once in a while they come along, but for the most part, I've had to, me personally anyway, I've had to seek them out. But also, you know, this is something we don't talk about. And I apologize. I know I'm running over my time with you. It's is building your own community of support systems. Right, which is something we don't talk about because when you forge your own path, it could feel super lonely. Like you're out there by yourself, nobody else is doing what you're doing, and you're an RN of one in a brand new role, working with people in different disciplines, not necessarily understanding what your role is or what you're trying to do. And so building that support system, not necessarily just mentorship, and that support system can be like family, friends, loved ones, colleagues that just support you and want to cheer you on. And I think it's important to also build that community. I'm sure you know, I'm a fan of yours. Hopefully I'm part of your community of cheerleaders because I love what you do. And I know I can always give you a call, and you have been a huge supporter of whatever I thought in my head that I want to do. But also, you know, having those people that you can trust that will support you in a new pathway. Right.
And that if that pathway is very super mega non-traditional, don't be afraid to branch out a little bit, and you find that person on LinkedIn, you know, like, okay, I'll go. I keep, sorry for the non-sports people, but I'm just riding this analogy today, or we're just going. So you're like, I'm going to be an RN on sports medicine staff. And I'm going to help us figure out how we're incorporating AI into our player physical assessments for the LA Lakers, right? How cool is that, right? Okay, so great. Well, look at the other 31 NBA teams and see who else is there anybody else out doing there? Okay, well, if they're not a nurse, is there someone else who's at least doing this role, right? Reach out to that person on LinkedIn, like, or however you choose to find this, because it was really honestly, it's been a, sorry for the cliche, but a game changer and really a life changer for me to have connected with the other nurses that are in this media space. Because people just don't get what we do sometimes and why we do it. And, you know, I think there's a difference between, again, I don't knock these nurses, like there's too many of us to say that there's an absolute perfect path when it comes to like social media. There are some things that I think are a little problematic on social media that some nurses do, but I don't like this narrative of, well, you're a nurse, you have to do X, Y, and Z type of social media. No, you're not. We're 4 million individuals. But the nurses who have done like health and medical education on social media, there are a lot of us who get really connected, right? And we're like, oh my gosh, how are you? Like, I love the way you said that, or this conference is really good about this, or I interviewed this guy and he's terrible, or, you know, like whatever. And that they've provided a really great support where my colleagues at the hospital are amazing, but they can't provide that type of support, right? When I come in and I'm completely drained from doing what you're doing with me right now and like interviewing someone and having to do the research in the background and do all that stuff and get together. And I know I've got 3 hours worth of editing ahead of me. And I go to my colleagues at work and they're like, why are you tired? You had yesterday off. Oh, I didn't, you know, I did X, Y, and Z. So, but other nurses who are in the space, other medical people who are in the space and still doing both jobs have been honestly a lifesaver. So whatever that your thing is that you start to develop, with respect to time, like you said, reach out to those folks. They're out there. They're out there.
Yeah, they're out there. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate you. As always, I owe you lunch.
No, not at all.
So
Thank you for having me. I love it. I feel like we could talk for 3 hours.
We probably can. I just want to be, it's not really, just want to be cognizant of my listeners' time, so they're not already shutting this podcast off, saving it for another day. But
or
again,
just listen at 1.5. I mean, I already talk fast enough, so I have a funny sounding voice at 1.5. Just saying, try it out.
That's funny. Good advice, though. Good advice. So anything else you want to share before I cut us off?
Well, this will be my not so shameless plug for if you want to see what I'm up to. It's drjamesqsimmons.com or Dr. James Q Simmons, all on all the social media platforms. And I really, at this fall, we're really close. We're in sort of the editing phases of everything right now, but you're gonna see a lot from me about a lot of what we've talked about. I really have a passion around helping nurses sort of get over the hump of that burnout. And all of the things I do, some of the biggest questions I get asked are, what should I do next? Should I go back to school? I love nursing, but I don't know what to do next. And so I'm hoping to really answer that for a lot of people with this this course, this program offering that I have, Code U, Resuscitating Your Passion for Nursing and Charting a Course to Career Clarity. So if you want to get on the email list for that, jump on the website or keep an eye out for it. You'll be hearing a lot about it.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I'll have that linked to the podcast website as well. So if you don't have a pen and you're driving and listening to this, don't worry. It'll be on the website.
Awesome.
All right.
Thank you.
So thank you. We've been listening to Dr. James Simmons. Fantastic to have you here again. And looking forward to bringing more incredible guests as we do more of these podcasts. Have a great one. Bye-bye. You've been listening to the RN Mentor with your host, Ali Tayeb. Please don't forget to visit www.alirtayeb.com. That's www.alirtayeb.com for podcast notes and resources, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, I wish you fair winds and following seas.